Are you like most sales and other professionals who want to grow their wealth faster than what they are currently doing through their company 401k, even with that company match, the stock market, or just plain saving money? Would you sleep better at night if you had the financial freedom to be job optional in just 3 to 5 years through investing in real assets? Maybe you don't want to stop working, but wouldn't it be cool if you could retire a decade earlier than most and do the traveling you and your family have planned for years while you're still young and can enjoy it? Let's face it, most busy professionals don't have the time or desire to take on more work outside of their W-2 to grow their wealth. On The Wealth Flow, each week we share the stories, the investments, and take a deep dive into the various asset classes that can deliver that accelerated growth to your portfolio passively. That's right, no extra work for you. Instead, we'll put your money to work. Learn what the 95% aren't talking about and join the top 5% of earners today on The Wealth Flow.
All right, welcome to another episode of The Wealth Flow. I am super excited about today's guest, Mr. Ryan Narus with Arca Mendes Group. Ryan has 4,200 units across 82 properties, and those are in the mobile home park space. And so excited to talk with him about that. I have a little bit of experience, not near as much as Ryan on this piece, but just excited to hear him break some of that stuff down. So Ryan, welcome to the show.
Heath, thanks for having me on, man. Apologies in advance. I'm a little under the weather. For those of you that have toddlers, you know what happens with preschool. They bring home every bug known to man.
That's right, exactly. I remember those days. My daughters are a little older now, but certainly remember those days. So, well, I think if we can maybe, obviously we talked a little bit about the number of units and kind of where you are now, but if you could just kind of give us an idea as to how you got started in real estate, maybe take us back to kind of the beginning.
Sure. So like most people, rich dad, poor dad, there was something screaming within that I didn't really understand, kind of like hearing someone speak in a foreign language. And as you kind of go down this journey of trying to decode this voice within, this message, this calling within, eventually, if you speak a foreign language, you know what I'm talking about. You go from, that was all gibberish to, oh, I know a couple words to, okay, I think I'm starting to get the gist, to eventually you know every single word coming out of someone's mouth and you can have a meaningful conversation. And that is really how I describe my entrepreneurial journey, my real estate journey. And it started off as, I know I need to own a business, my own business, to I know it needs to be a real estate business, to I think I want single family homes, to okay, I don't want single family homes, to oh, hey, there's this wonderful thing called mobile home parks. And that was a journey in and of itself. I started looking for a company to start in 2012. Didn't find mobile home parks till 2015. So it took 3 years to even find mobile home parks. It took 2 years to prove I could do it and to prep to quit my job and go full time. And going full time involved living in a mobile home, being my own property manager, making $35,000 a year with no benefits, and just investing anything and everything I had into this business, basically going all in. As a buzzword, going all in, but literally going all in. And
yeah. Sounds like
that was 2017. So it took 5 years from, hey, I want to own my own business, to now I'm full-time in my own business. And then I wasn't really at home or back to normal, if you will, until really the start of 2019. So, I mean, it really took me, years to hear this calling within, figure out what the calling was, proving I could do it, going all in. Yeah, it is a journey.
Yeah, for sure. So prior to the mobile home stuff, though, you mentioned single family. Did you start with single family or did you just go straight? Okay. What kind of like rentals, multifamily? What did you do there?
Yeah, I house hacked. So I bought townhomes, lived in it kind of thing. I didn't do very many. It didn't go well very quickly. So I kind of got burned out pretty quick, because I think what I realized in the single family home space is if you're not bringing some type of value to the table in terms of you're an HVAC guy or you're a plumber, or you know plumbers on the cheap, or you're basically fixing things at retail. And
Right.
even if you're buying a fixer upper for a discount, when you're paying for everything else at retail, it just gets really hard to make money because, again, you're doing everything at full rip. So you might as well just go buy a single family home, which is going to, as we all know, traditionally appreciate 2 to 3% a year. And like at that point in time, it's really hard to hit scale, really hard to hit economies of scale in that space, especially as a little guy. So, I mean, it was beyond just the headache factor, is also doing the math and going like, what am I doing here?
Yeah. How did you make the transition from that into, I guess, how did you run across even the mobile home park asset class? What turned you onto that?
So the funny answer is the show Trailer Park Boys on Netflix. I
There you
love
go.
that show.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
when my former business partner, he still really close friends, he had a calling that was real estate that at first he thought was mobile home parks. And then as he kind of decoded the message, if you will, found out that was actually development. So he got out of the space amicably. We're still friends to this day and close friends. And me, it just got deeper and deeper. And this is what I meant to do for the rest of my life. But so the funny answer is Trailer Park Boys. But the real answer is I realized in 2012 is I was not born wealthy. I had no money. I had no network. I had no experience. I had no idea who to turn to. So when you're in a situation where you don't come from money, I need to stop taking advice from people who don't have what I want and then take that advice to try to go get. How does that make any sense? And so as I kind of went through this progression of logic, I wound up just reading any book I could read, which was horribly inefficient, but that's a story for another day, and talking to anybody I could talk to. And throughout that process, I stumbled upon a book called The Millionaire Next Door. And in that book, they mention the idea of these millionaire mobile home park owners that live in the park. They've got these parks with no debt and yada, yada, yada. And I remember reading that and going, I consider myself to be an unconventional thinker and someone who's willing to do things differently and make a big bet, a big sacrifice on myself. If the biggest knock against this space is that you don't want to be a dude who lives in and owns a mobile home park, then that's an artificial barrier to entry for this space. And so I got that idea in plus or minus 2012, but then put it on the back burner because I didn't quite know that multifamily real estate was where I wanted to go. So then it wasn't until 2015 that my former business partner threw the idea my way. And I went, I've heard about this. As long as the numbers check out and we have a good plan, yada, 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 let's do it. So that plus Trailer Park Boys, but that's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, no, that's cool. You mentioned the barrier to entry and kind of the reputation that mobile homes have. And they still, to this day, right? I mean, it does. I have friends that are just 100% apartments and won't look at mobile home parks just because of the asset itself. They just don't see the value there. And to me, I think that benefits some of us that are interested in and play in that space just because it keeps a lot of folks out, just because it's not as glamorous. It's not as sexy as some of the other asset classes, but sure is more fun, right? It's got a lot of great stories that come from it. So how about your first park? Tell me a little bit about that. How many units was it and how did we do the financing, all that?
Sure. So our first park ever was outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. And it was 89 units. The purchase price was $1,525,000. And it was a turnaround property that required, I think we ended up going like 65% loan to value. So, I mean, you're talking $500K you got to raise plus CapEx because we needed to pave the roads plus the reserves. I think we went under a contract in March and didn't close till September. I think it took or at least we were verbally agreed in September. Contract negotiations, issue after issue, didn't close till September. It took forever, and it felt forever at the time. Anyways, it was an interesting deal because, again, I had no money, I had no experience, I had no network. The total capital raise is $800K. I could confidently tell you at that time, if I were to call text or email any millionaire and get a warm response within 24 hours? I could confidently tell you the answer to that was no. So the question is, how the heck do you do this? And we found the deal. So as a result, you should be compensated for finding the deal, which we were. And because we had no money or operational prowess to bring to the table, we brought in someone who could handle the operations and the capital raising. And
there we go.
They tasked us with finding the debt because why not? And we couldn't. We literally, Keith, we called 40 banks and got 40 no's. 40, 40. Cuarenta, if you speak Spanish. 40.
Right.
All no's.
Nice.
And it was very humbling. And they had to call in a favor from a bank out of like Wisconsin for a deal in North Carolina, which just seems ridiculous. But it was a wonderful deal for everybody involved. The roads got paved, the community got upgraded and preserved because they wanted to redevelop it into an apartment complex, which it is still a mobile home park to this day, which knock on wood, it'll continue to be. A friend of mine owns it now. We sold out a couple of years ago for various reasons. But the fun story about that one was we bought it, but we were limited partners on the deal because, so first, I don't think anyone could have trusted us because we didn't know what the heck we were doing. And a lot of folks, they try to buy their first property all by themselves with no other investors. And we took the opposite approach, which was, I don't think being a limited partner is a bad deal. We got a nice finder's fee. We didn't put any money in. And I believe over doubled our money, which is fantastic, and got paid distributions along the way. So that's not a bad deal at all. And we got to see firsthand how a professional outfit operated, which is very valuable. And then the second deal was really our first. Because the second deal, Ian, myself, and we brought on a friend of ours, the three of us, which comprised Archimedes Group, bought our first deal in January of 2017. So really it was 4 plus or minus months after that. So I really consider my second deal to be my first because my first deal kind of had training wheels on it, if you will. And then our second deal was really ours.
And on your second one, were y'all responsible for management, all of that, or did you outsource that piece of it? Okay. You learned enough, I guess, on that first one to kind of at least know. Yeah. So
bingo. And the fun part about the second one is we called 15 banks and got 2 yeses. So and a little bit better.
Yeah. A little better results.
It was smaller. Our second one was 33 units. And it was just a wonderful deal for a lot of reasons because a lot went wrong and we learned. And nothing killed us, but we had to do a capital call. We didn't pay any distributions out for 18 months. And worse, we had to call up our investor and be like, dude, we need you to write a check, tune of like $100,000. So not a small amount. But he believed in us and he believed in the property and we walked him through what was happening. And he was too cool for school. And we are still really close friends to this day, that individual. And yeah, I mean, look, I think anybody listening in, you hear this story, you can look at where I'm at now with 82 properties, 4,200 units. My podcast is over 125,000 unique downloads, 6,000 plus people in the Facebook group. People message me all the time asking for advice. And with my mentorship program and everything, I think is shocking to people is hearing my early day stories because people go, oh, wow, you actually were like, to pull an example from martial arts, like you were a white belt too. Like all black belts start as a white belt. There's no shame. And honestly, if you put me in a classroom of other white belts, I probably would have been one of the worst white belts there. I was just too stubborn and I was too much of a sponge to learn and a glutton for failure feedback, if you will, in learning and growing.
That's interesting. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about the mentorship stuff. A lot of our audience are high-paid sales professionals, and they know of the stock market. They know of the company 401k, but they don't necessarily know beyond that. And so I'm glad that you're on and able to share some of the insight on mobile home parks. Just because, again, it's not something that most people would have thought to invest in. And I know you probably have opportunity, if not on a current deal, on one coming up that they could get in on and hear a little bit more about what the offering is, if that's fair. So out of the 82 properties that you have, it sounds like at least the first 2 were bank financing. Is that pretty well across the board what you've done, or have you done some owner financing as well?
Yeah, I have almost exclusively done bank. I have had, I don't know, a handful or so seller carry, but it is not as ubiquitous as has kind of been talked up to be. And it's even worse now because all of the people who are kind of willing to do that have done it. And the mom and pops, unsophisticated, unconglomerated bunch, if you will, don't want to do that. And I kind of can't blame them because it's a lot of risk to take on for not a lot of reward. And especially today, you could go get a government bond for like 5%. What are we doing? We're going to not pay state and local tax, just federal tax on nice clip of interest. Like that's liquid. What are we doing here? So interesting that you bring up a lot of salespeople are tuning in. I am a former salesperson. I was an award-winning car salesman, if that is not an oxymoron. Sold cars for 4 years, commission only. It was brutal. I loved it until I hated it. And I feel your pain. I remember, just a quick aside for all the salespeople listening in, man, I sprained my ankle playing basketball. And I remember I called out sick and I called my boss. I'm like, dude, I sprained my ankle last night. I can barely get around my own apartment. I can't even take a shower, really. Like, I just need to sit on it, ice it, whatever. Like, you think I'm going to walk a trade or do a test drive like this? No chance, dude. And they're like, just this sound of disappointment in my boss's voice. Because I was like, send me my internet leads. I'll call them from home. Don't worry about it. Just sit on your leg. I remember, like, if you wanted to motivate me, this is the best thing you could have done. Because I literally was like, after like 10 minutes of feeling sorry for myself, I was like, I literally drove myself to the store, which at the time, by the way, I had a manual transmission. So one bum ankle, and I'm basically shifting gears. And it is probably one of the dumbest things I've ever done. And drove to the store, bought crutches, and then drove to the dealership and literally hobbled around selling cars on crutches. And it's a funny, inspirational experience. Yeah. But really the point I'm trying to make here is that at, I think it was like 24 years old when that happened.
Yeah.
If I ever needed a bigger slap, wake up call, slap in the face, if you will, it's like, you can do this in your 20s. I'm in my 50s. I have a mortgage and kids in college. Dude, forget it. I need to find a way to make sure if I get fired or I get hurt, I need time off, whatever. Like,
For sure.
I don't got to worry about that. And for the sales folks listening in, the stock market's great. Don't get me wrong. I certainly maxed out my 401k when I was working for corporate America. I certainly have plenty of exposure to the stock market, but stocks don't pay dividends anymore. They just don't. And if the ones that they do, they don't appreciate like some other growth stocks do. And what is going to net you? Like a 7 before taxes? Whereas you could be a limited partner in a real estate deal and make 8 plus possibly double your money. Like I was talking about with that first deal I did. I made an 8% return on my money annually. And my initial investment over doubled in X number of years, 5 years or less. Like the stock market's never going to do that for you. So anyways, had to throw that out there.
No, for sure. I appreciate that. Yeah, I used to sell cars too. So I've got some stories there. Not in crutches. I didn't do that. But anyway, so tell me a little bit about the asset class mobile homes. I know there's a lot of strong feelings on why it's such a good asset class as opposed to some of the others. And really just want to hear your take on it with all your experience.
Yeah, look, there's a bunch of great ways you can answer that. But I think my personal favorite answer to that question is that there's a real purpose in it. And there's a really strong why, which is it is an incredibly viable form of affordable housing. It's cheap. It's really safe, which shocks a lot of people because anytime that tornado hits, they always show the trailer park. And the truth is the tie downs do an incredible job. I own a ton of stuff in Florida that gets pummeled by hurricanes. And there's mobile homes that have been there for decades, unscathed by horrible hurricanes. And nobody wants to talk about that. And I'll tell you why. It's because they're actually built incredibly well. Statistically speaking, from fire marshals to engineers, people who really know what they're doing, who look at this long and hard, know that they're not that less dangerous than some a little bit higher quality, if you will, stick-built homes. It's not a marketable difference. Crime If it's run right, it's statistically negligible. It's not what people think they are. Now, are there low class, high crime, dangerous homes with no tie downs on it that could blow away with a tornado? Absolutely. That's what the media is going to show you. They're not going to show you the nice retirement communities and all that jazz. So what I'll say is, because of Hollywood and the media, and sorry, Trailer Park Boys, but shows like Trailer Park Boys, it just gets unnecessary stigma. And when you look at real estate in general, real estate is a game of highest and best use. And from a city planner's standpoint, city planners have to worry about things like roads, infrastructure, sewer capacity. How can I get water to you? How can I get sewer back to the treatment plant? Because don't forget, San Antonio, Texas is a little bit more flat than Charlotte, North Carolina. So we're going to have a lot more lift stations. Think about that. How many X number of miles do you need another lift station to get sewage up a hill, down a hill, this way, that way, or the other? The city's got to maintain that. Schools, fire, police, all that jazz. They're just not taxed the way a single family home is, the way some other luxury apartment complexes are. So there's a lot of NIMBYism. And beyond just the NIMBYism, there's a lot of really oblong parcels out there that just are awkwardly shaped. Topography is weird. If you drive by and you pay attention to mobile home parks, dude, you got a couple cinder blocks and a good tie down, you can pretty much put them anywhere. All you got to do is run water, sewer, and power to it. That's really it. And the second mobile home park I bought was in this little old town called Asheville, North Carolina, which you ever heard of it? It's literally in the mountains. And I think my property could double as a ski resort one day because, dude, if you drop the basketball out of your driveway, it's over. You're never getting, it's just going to go straight down. Like if you trip and you fall down that hill, God, like it's over. Like, hey, you know, it's nice to know you, dude. Sharp. And those homes have been there for decades, because you can steel rebar them. You can really tie them down incredibly strongly. And so when you have a really oblong parcel or one that's got a lot of bedrock or weird soil, or they're kind of your awkward stepchildren parcels that are just, again, oblong shaped, awkwardly placed, you can make them a mobile home park. You can infill them, develop them out for remarkably cheaper than apartment complexes and stuff. But again, the whole NIMBYism thing. And so the beautiful thing about getting into this space, in my opinion, is that you have the chance to preserve affordable housing. Now, I will also say, because people always want to know about the money part, is it a lucrative space? It used to be. It is not so much now. There's several reasons for that. Depreciation that we used to have, or we still technically have, accelerated bonus depreciation, which is slowly going away. They're stepping it back. And there's a bunch of other tax benefits that come along with it because our government is trying to incentivize the growth and preservation of affordable housing. So our government is trying to work for us. And what that means for, opportunity zone, for example, there's a lot of tax havens. And if you're really super wealthy and you have a ton of ordinary income, say, for example, a sports player, tons of ordinary income, you could buy a property like this and have a mountain of depreciation. So your W-2, now obviously it depends on how your tax situation, but a lot of people looked at it like this. You could have a heavy tax situation and buy something like a mobile home park and then get a mountain of depreciation and save just hundreds of thousands, if not millions in taxes. And so for a lot of people, what's happened over the last few years is they have bought at super high prices mobile home parks. I mean, you see it in the news all the time, like such and such mobile home park bought for a record price. And in part, that's because of the tax benefits. But also, it's recession resistant because we're a step or maybe arguably 2 steps above homelessness. I mean, it's pretty much Section 8 is one below a /HUD/whatever, and then homelessness. And whenever you're a step or a step 2 removed from homelessness, if it's a good economy, people are stepping up to you. If it's a bad economy, people are downgrading to you. So you're kind of in a really wonderful spot where you're always going to stay full. And then also removing these homes is like not impossible, but boy, it's debilitating. It's $5,000 to move a home. Then you got to deck it, skirt it, do the electrical. I mean, you're talking $15,000 plus to move a home. And you can't live in it when you're moving it, because when you move it, you think you're going to move it down the road at 45 miles an hour with all your pictures on the wall. Forget it. You have to have somewhere else to stay. So really what ends up happening is when someone wants to move, they just sell it, kind of like a single family home development. So there's a lot of really good operational reasons to own it. The money's still pretty reasonable. They trade a little bit higher from a basis point standpoint than on a cap rate basis than apartment complexes. So tax benefits, they trade at higher cap rates than apartments. So the cash flow is a little bit better. Appreciation is very strong. Tax benefits are pretty incredible. Operationally, it might feel lighter than apartments. They're not. I have plenty of friends that have done both and have said unequivocally, undisputedly, mobile home parks are harder. And it makes sense why, right? We're just dealing with tougher tenants with trickier laws and NIMBYism. It's a harder space to run. It's not passive at all. But as a result, you get compensated for it. So as long as you have the stomach for it, the passion for it like I do, or you find someone like me who, for whatever reason, loves the torture, if you will.
Yeah, that's great. And I agree. There's all those benefits. I like the fact, too, that in most cases, depending on whether they're park-owned homes or not, if it's a tenant's home, they're typically not having that turnover, right, that you see like on an apartment complex. So when somebody moves out, having to do that stuff. Speaking of park-owned homes, tell me a little bit about your portfolio. Are you buying some of these with park-owned homes? If so, is that something you stay away from? Kind of get your take on that.
Sure. So I actually do a whole episode on my podcast, Mobile Home Parks in Real Life, where I kind of weigh the pros and cons of park-owned homes versus tenant-owned homes. Literally, the episode is called POH versus TOH, so park-owned home versus tenant-owned home. And spoiler alert, TLDR, if you will, is that it all depends on the delta between lot rent and park-owned home rent. And I give the example of Spartanburg, South Carolina versus Asheville, North Carolina. And in Asheville, I've experienced an enormous gap between a park-owned home rental and lot rent. I mean, enormous, to the tune of like $1,000 a month. Enormous.
Right.
And in Spartanburg, it's the exact opposite. The delta between what I can get in lot rent versus park-owned home rent it's a lot thinner. So say Spartanburg is $450 and a single wide mobile home, 2-bedroom could go for say $800, maybe $850 just for easier math. That's a $400 delta. Your security deposit there is going to be $1,600, give or take. In Asheville, same scenario. I think Asheville right now we're at $575 lot rent, depending on which market X, Y, and Z. And I'm low. There's some institutional players at $695 and climbing.
Oh, wow.
And dude, I throw a double wide up online for $2,000 and my inbox explodes. So you're talking over $1,000. And by the way, if I rent that, I can 1.5x security deposit. So that's a $3,000 security deposit for $2,000 a month. A nice double wide. Why would I lot rent that?
Right.
Because at that point in time, when you have a market as insane as Asheville, the threat of someone removing a home is actually greater. If living in a mobile home park is going to cost you $3,000 down to rent, people have the $5 to $10 to $15 to move a home out. Whereas Spartanburg is a little bit different, though I've had people move out in Spartanburg too. So it happens in everywhere. So in other words, I think it's largely driven on what's the difference there? Because if the difference is $1,000, you're not going to spend $1,000. If you do a re-roof, an HVAC, I don't know, and a ton of subfloor work and a rehab, you're going to make that back. $1,000 difference is $12,000 a year. Yeah. Yes, the turnover is lower. Yeah, I agree. Yes, you don't have to fix things in your house, but you don't have control of that. And if somebody stops paying or disappears, it's not exactly easy to get that tenant-owned home title. And a lot of times, and this is happening at my properties, I've bought properties where there's just an abandoned tenant-owned home, and the last guy didn't go through the abandoned title process. I can't legally sell that. So in other words, you have two choices. You can either rent it out month to month, or you got to sit there and wait to go through the abandoned title process. It's a pain in the butt. So there's a lot of reasons to do both. I think ultimately, Keith, the truth of the matter is park-owned homes are more profitable, period. That's simple. You will make more money if you own and operate park-owned homes. However, it's a heck of a lot more work from a marketing standpoint, from a staffing standpoint, from a tracking your inventory, because it's really easy for shark bites and tools to go missing. And it's a lot more work. So what I've generally done over the years is I've erred more towards tenant-owned homes. Now, I like buying all park-owned home properties and turning the base and then infilling with people that I've selected and background checked and everything. And I prefer to buy 2 to 3 star quality assets and raise them, because I'm now in control of the mobile home. So I can paint it, sign it, skirt it, upgrade the appearance of it. Whereas if I buy all tenant-owned homes, that's not mine. So if you're buying an all tenant-owned home community, that's a 2-star community, you do not have the legal right to go and put siding or paint someone's home. And the question before, well, why don't you just go do it for them? Like, sure, fine. But not everyone's going to say yes to that, because guess what? I've tried that. Oh, and by the way, a lot of people don't want you touching that or this, that, and the other thing. There's a lot of reasons why that simple answer is not necessarily applicable, especially from a liability standpoint. Like, say you put siding on a home and you don't moisture barrier it, and then mold gets in there and then someone gets sick. This nice benevolent act that you've done for someone is now become a liability. So to me, I prefer, if I can, more park-owned homes at the acquisition than tenant-owned homes, because I have control. That's more work, but I have control. It takes longer to turn around, but I have control. And then from there, I decide which way we go. And also, I'll throw this out there too. The older a home, the harder it is to maintain it a park-owned home, because when you have a homogenous community like all Oakwood, all Clayton, all within 5-year manufactured dates, all of a sudden you can bulk order parts. All of a sudden you can have a maintenance guy or 2 maintenance guys, and they can get really, really good at fixing like 1995 to 2000 Clayton models, because that's all they work on. And you can bulk order parts from Stylecrest or Blevins or Home Depot or wherever. And it gets really tough in the park-owned home space when you're dealing with really old homes that just break and break and break. And especially when you're dealing with mobile homes that have been discontinued for decades. Finding parts is just impossible. So I would say if you're going to go the park-owned home route beyond just the delta between the market lot rent versus market rent, I would also consider how new, quality, and homogenous your product is.
That makes sense. How about on those 82 properties that you have? You mentioned the Carolinas a couple different times. Where geographically are you guys?
So I'm based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And I own in North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, Mississippi, and Florida.
Okay. And predominantly in the North Carolina, South Carolina, or are you pretty evenly spread across those states?
I am predominantly North Carolina and Florida. So I have a sprinkle of a portfolio in Mississippi, a sprinkle of a portfolio in Tennessee, and South Carolina and Georgia. So I've got 22 in Florida, and oh man, I have a list somewhere, Keith.
Well, yeah, at 82, it's easy for me to name mine. So, that's awesome. Also, I know we're kind of just a little long on time, and I definitely want to get to kind of what you currently have going on. You mentioned also your Facebook group and all that, and I think that's actually how the two of us initially met after I joined that. So tell us a little bit about what all you have going on.
Sure. So I have, like I said, a wonderful podcast. It's called Mobile Home Parks in Real Life. I don't sell anything. I don't ask you for really anything other than typical, please give me a 5-star review, like, subscribe, all that jazz in exchange for my due diligence checklist. But otherwise, it's designed to be just free content, because when I started, like I mentioned earlier, Keith, I had no money, no experience, no network, and boot camps were thousands of dollars, and I didn't have that. And at the time, there were effectively no podcasts. And then when the podcast started to creep up, they all wanted something from you. Hey, invest in my fund. Hey, buy my training course. Hey, whatever. So in 2018, when I started my podcast, it was just like, dude, someone's got to get up here and just inject some realism into this space, because there are a lot of people with these high and mighty ideas that, like me, when I got started and I quit my job and I moved into a mobile home park, I was like, this is not at all what I was under the impression of this space was going to be. And for me, I fell in love with it. But I knew a lot of people would go out, buy a mobile home park, and then go, oh my God, I hate this. I hate everything about this. And I've seen that happen over and over again over the years. So my mission has really been, let's help preserve and enhance affordable housing, specifically mobile home parks, by trying our best to beat down the stigma, prove to people, local governments, everybody, that mobile home parks can and should be one of the most viable answers, solutions, if you will, the affordable housing crisis for a lot of reasons. And so that's why I give away my time for free. So I have my mentorship program, my podcast, that Facebook group. I want to equip the little guy, little gal to go out there to get these good would-be entrepreneurs off the sidelines and into the game. And again, I don't ask anything for it. I don't want anything for it. And the reason is I've got an abundance mindset. I've done plenty well for myself. I don't need more money. Right now, what I need, or at least what I feel my calling, again, like decoding that little voice inside me, a little passion, that flame, that whatever you want to call it, inside me. And it is pulling me very, very rapidly towards, look, we've got this much life, however many decades it may be. I mean, I don't know how much longer I have on this planet, but while I'm here, I want to make this place better than when I got here. And for that reason, I don't want anybody's money. I want your time. I want to inspire you to go out and be a good person and make the world better and help me make this pitch to our government and our neighbors that NIMBYism is killing something that is ultimately going to help everybody. It's going to help everybody. So if you're listening to this, like, please, you don't owe me a penny. Email me, listen to my podcast, shoot me over questions. Like, I don't care. I don't need anything from you other than please take my inspirational words, go do something good. And even more importantly than that, go inspire somebody else. Because the reason why I come on podcasts like yours, Keith, is because I want to get this message out. And this message is exactly what I just said, which is I think I can do more good by giving people all of my secrets and having them go out and do good things and inspire others to do good things. If I can create a contagion, a viral movement, if you will, of people going out, they're equipped with all my knowledge and secrets and things and stuff, and they can go out and do good things, I think that's going to help me help the world. So that's my calling. And again, like, I'm here. Don't be shy. Reach out to me. I'm literally doing podcasts like Keith. So you can find me, listener.
Right. And what about if we have some folks on here that maybe they like the idea, you've piqued their interest in investing in mobile home parks, but maybe they don't want to tackle that piece of it themselves. They'd rather invest passively. Do you have opportunities available for that?
I do and I don't. So let me explain.
Okay.
So I want to first say another big reason why I want to kind of support the David and not the Goliath is because our space is also getting poisoned with a bunch of private equity shops who are coming in and they just want to make money. And we need more good people who aren't just in it for the money. I mean, don't get me wrong. Everybody is in it for the money. Like, you go to work. Why? Because money. Like, come on. Like, it's nice if you work also has a higher purpose to it, right? But like, we all have a job. We all work some way, somehow. So I want to encourage people to beat private equity shops to the punch. So we can go and push out greed. Now, circling back to your question there, I think this answer actually applies to both groups of people. Those who want to take on the heavy headaches like me, and those who are like, I really like this idea, I really like what Ryan's saying, but like, I'd rather just kind of be the capital backer, like give a person who's motivated like Ryan, who's the passion like Ryan, to go out and do things. Now, I would encourage both people who want to do it and want to kind of passively do it, be a limited partner, do it. Hey, I was a limited partner on my first deal. I just told everybody that. And it worked out fabulously well for me for a host of reasons. And so what I would say is, whether you want to take on the arduous task of running one of these properties yourself, or whether you want to support the cause, if you will, profit from it, but also be helpful, because let's be honest, if you're capital that's not private equity and you're easy to partner with, you're understanding when things go wrong, like I mentioned, my main investor from my second deal ever, that's incredibly helpful. Now, I don't raise money.
Okay.
So if you're like, dude, this is awesome. I really like this Ryan guy. I trust him, yada, yada, yada. Like, dude, can I give you money? The answer is no. I don't take money. I only do friends and family money. And that's how I've grown my portfolio. And I've built relationships over years. And I'm really, 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 really selective with who I'll take money from. And also, I don't do my own podcast to go and raise money. I think that's kind of off brand, if you will, for who I am and who I'm marketing myself to be. That being said, there are tons of great people out there who I'm happy to refer you to. Now, I'm not going to vouch for people I haven't parked my own money with, but I personally am a limited partner in a handful of deals. So I'm happy to refer you to folks like that. If you come across someone you like, an opportunity you like, you're like, can I get some free advice from someone who knows what they're doing, knows what questions to ask? Yes, email me. I'm happy to do. I'm happy to refer people to you. If you find something you like, you're welcome to email it to me. I'm happy to just kind of give you my 2 cents. Happy to hop on a call if I have a couple minutes. Like, again, I really want to help encourage people get into this space actively or passively then actively, or actively and then passively. So even though I'm not selling anything or raising any money, like, I don't need anything from you. Again, I think the selfish part of me is just that I want to see this space have an improved reputation, because I think everybody would benefit from that. And again, don't feel like you need anything from me. I ain't hard to find. Please, I'm here so you can find me.
Right, exactly. Now, you definitely have a servant's heart and have been a great teacher to, I know, many. And I always see you active, particularly on the Facebook group. But I actually will be checking out your podcast as well, because I was kind of scrolling through it before our meeting here today. And it looks like you've got some great guests and looks like it's a wealth of information. So appreciate that. I guess first, I'd like to ask, what advice could you give somebody who is a new investor, whether it be in mobile home parks or whatever else? What is something that you've learned along the way that you kind of wish you knew when you had started?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of different ways I can go with that. I'll just say it's a skill like anything else. You are going to be bad at it up front. I personally was bad at it, or at least I felt I was not overly good at it when I started, because other than that first deal I ever did, my first true LP dollar was maybe 18 months ago, 2 years ago. So that feels kind of strange coming from me, being a more seasoned operator on the general partnership side, saying, hey, I was really bad at being a limited partner. Mm-hmm. And the truth of the matter is, some of those limited partnership deals did not go the right way. And long story short, I got roped into the general partnership or bought out. And that's okay for a lot of different reasons. But I think the more important lesson there is that even if you are like someone with 125,000 unique downloads on your podcast and you get this following and branded yourself as a really knowledgeable person, and you have war stories for days, and you're, for all intents and purposes, any KPI you want to throw out there, a good operator, that doesn't mean you're going to be a good limited partner. And again, that's not because I'm an annoying person or a bad investor. It's that if you don't know how to pick the right operator or the right investment property or yada, 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 and I'll just kind of be a little more specific. The stuff I was looking at were in markets I didn't understand with people I barely knew. And that's not a good idea. Now, the good news is nothing bad has happened to me personally, and there's only a handful of deals. It's just the bigger humbling thing is, if you do not do this professionally, if you do not spend a lot of time trying to learn how to be a limited partner, then you need to go into your first deal knowing you're a newbie. And I think my mistake was I went into the deal knowing that and with that mindset. But at the same token, I guess I just did not appreciate how little I actually knew, even coming from a wealth of knowledge about this space. So that was really, really eye-opening to me. And what I'll say now that I'm trying to look at other things like ATM funds, self-storage funds, RV parks, it is really easy to fall in love with a story and not an operator and not a piece of dirt. That is what you need to be looking at. Who's going to be operating it? What questions do you ask? Which was what got me is like, I know how to operate these things. So I know how to pick a good operator. I'm not necessarily good at finding markets that are outside of my comfort zone, if you will, without spending an enormous amount of time. Like I need to fall in love with like Annapolis, Maryland. I know basically nothing about Annapolis, Maryland. So how can I invest in Annapolis, Maryland? Fine, I know how a mobile home park works, but I don't necessarily know how a mobile home park works in Annapolis, Maryland. And that's just the stuff I think that I found. So Keith, to kind of summarize what I'm saying here, if you're looking to invest actively or passively, really, if you're a newbie, you need to go into it knowing you are. No matter how much you think you know, do not be arrogant, be humble, be starving to learn. Go into it, don't analysis paralysis and not invest. But just know that even me, who's got thousands of lots and years of experience, and I lived in a mobile home park, you are hearing me say, I think I made a couple mistakes early on investing as a limited partner in my own asset class. So if I am willing to say something very humbling and embarrassing very publicly, you should allow yourself the forgiveness and the runway to make mistakes too.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. I appreciate you sharing that. How about outside of when you're not doing mobile home parks? What makes you tick outside of work?
Well, anybody who has kids under 5 knows literally nothing outside of work. My son wakes me up at 6:30, whether I want to get up or not, and he goes to bed at 9. So I got to get to bed by 10, and I work very, very tough outside of the childcare hours. Inside of the childcare hours to only go to another job outside of childcare hours. I love both my kids, but in the interim, when they're like napping or whatever, when I'm not doing my best to be the best husband I can, I love sports. So that's really all I have time for. Now, when my kids are a little older than 5, Keith, I might have a different answer right now.
No, it makes total sense.
And a full-time dad.
Awesome. Well, hey, I've really enjoyed this, Ryan. I think you've added a ton of value to our audience, and we'll have to do it again sometime. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Keith, been honored to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Being that you're still here, I trust you found value in this episode. I personally wish I would have known these guests and strategies when I started my wealth creation journey. Go to wealthflow.capital to subscribe to our newsletter. And as a free gift, we will send you our quarterly market report and the top 10 things to look for in an investment opportunity. Take a minute to give our show a rating and review. Help us reach 1 million professionals by subscribing and sharing this episode with someone you know who could also find value in it.